Well, hi, for those of you who haven't met me, my name is Sarah Franklin. I am the Director of Sales and Marketing at Impact Data, and thank you for joining us today at our Odessey client workshop, where we're going to focus on helping you get the most out of TalkBox and really the best practice around email and SMS marketing. I am going to be honest, I am not the expert in your gaming data, so I'm not the best person to help you with that, but we can certainly take questions on anything specifically about that and follow up with you one-on-one. So where I help our clients are really trying to improve their deliverability, trying to improve their engagement metrics, and really work on best practice with their email and SMS marketing. So as I said earlier, feel free to drop questions in the chat as we go, and Julie will interrupt me with what we need to get answered, because this is really about what you need. So that's really important. And we are recording it. We'll send through the presentation. I'm going to be jumping between the presentation and TalkBox and a few other tools, and but we'll be sending it so you've got all the links to everything that I'm going to cover today. And I'm also going to send you an email and ask you for feedback, just like we encourage you to ask your customers. So let's kick off in terms of getting the most out of TalkBox. So what we're going to cover off today, obviously, welcome and meet the team. I'll get Julie to put herself on screen in a second so you can see her. Sending communications, the best practice, top tips, using old images and things like that. When and how to use SMS best. Audience selection using filters and tags. It's one of the things we're seeing clients really get their teeth into. Audience segmentation is probably the best tool in your armory to increase engagement. Some automated campaigns that we think about, that we see across Odessey and gaming in general, and some ideas and some of the features that are coming soon to TalkBox. So firstly, as I mentioned, Director of Sales and Marketing for Impact Data. I've been here for quite a few years. Those of you who have been in the industry for a while probably seen me at a few AHGs or AGEs. And Julie, if she would like to put herself on camera so you can all see her, is our National Sales Manager.
I've got sound, but you have to let me have video.
Oh,
I can't start it because you have stopped it.
Oh, okay, that's weird. Okay, doesn't appear that I can let you. So anyway, we'll send a picture of Julie in the presentation, or you can link to us all on LinkedIn anyway. And Julie, as I said, is our National Sales Manager. Sadie, who many of you deal with, she's not working this afternoon, but she's operations and support. And Sadie's often the one that sends reports and helps you with specific engagement opportunities with your gaming data and things like that. So many of you will have met Sadie, and she heads up our support team. Brendan, Andrew and Jeremy, our new team member. Okay, so let's keep going. The first thing you need to do, and for those of you that are newer to TalkBox, this is probably not so much of an issue, but if you've been with us for a while, there's a really good chance that your users aren't current, and you need to make sure that that's okay. So I'm going to jump out of the presentation, and it's going to be a bit freaky how we do this today, but that's how we have to do. So the first thing you do is you go over into the right-hand side and you go to settings, and you go over here to users. Now, the people that own the account should be the decision makers. So it should be the secretary manager. It should be, you know, the people in charge of marketing, all of that sort of stuff. So they should be owners of the account. You can let other people be users. So you might have a marketing agency that works for you, and you give them the opportunity to be a user, but you don't necessarily want them to have full access to your account. So they can send, create emails and do all of that sort of thing, but they can't add other users, which I think is really important. So the first thing you should do, go in, make sure these are all the correct people. And for goodness sake, please don't use a single email address like marketing@ to log on. You need to use your individual email addresses. And see, this is very naughty of Dale. You shouldn't be using that one, because that just creates opportunities for your account to, be compromised by other people getting in. So that's the first tip that we really want you to think about. The next one is, do you have other data sources? So does anyone, if they want to pop in the chat, have data other than membership? So what I mean by that is your reservation platform. It could be that you've introduced Mr. Yum, order at table, or something like that. If you have that sort of data, it's really, really valuable, but it can't go into your Odessey account, because as you know, the only data that goes into your account is your Odessey membership. So if you need another account to put that data in, let us know. And we call that a guest account. Here we go, we've got someone. Ticketing platforms, oh, that's interesting. Louise, can you tell me what ticketing platform you use? I'm really hoping you're going to say Try Booking, because if it is, we're about to complete our integration with them. Okay, simple tips. Okay, all right. So we are about to bring in Try Booking, but if you can get access to that data, we put it into a guest account, and then what we do is we wash it against your member account every day, and that allows you to see who isn't a member yet and invite them to become a member. And we call that member nurturing, and that's something that we can automate with you. So we've started to do that with a number of Odessey clients. I think Narang RSL, Gimpy's doing it, Marucci RSL, a number of venues, particularly with reservation data. Often the people who come to the bistro, you may not be aware whether they're members or not. So it's a really valuable source of membership growth. So if you've got other data, let us know. The other category of data that you often have is staff. You need to talk to your staff, and often using TalkBox is a really easy way to do that. So if you haven't got them in as a category within Odessey, and I know a number of venues do that, if you don't have them in there, again, they can go into a guest account, because really, if you're running a network, you know, a big promotion, you need to tell them about it as well. You probably want to tell them before your customers. So if you've got a category of staff, that's a really valuable data source, and you should be talking to them. So think about that. If you've got other data sources, reach out and let us know. The other point in a bit of housekeeping way is about resubscribing customers. Now, for those of you that might have done this, at the moment, you have to do it in TalkBox. If a customer comes in and says, Jacko, I'm not getting my birthday email. Now, Jacko, you're only new to us, so that wouldn't have happened yet, but if it did, your receptionist can't go in and update that in Odessey at the moment, or in Metropolis. They would have to go to TalkBox and issue a resubscribe link from TalkBox. Now, we're working with Odessey to improve that, and you'd actually be able to do it in Odessey, which will be a really valuable thing, because from time to time, people accidentally unsubscribe and then they realize that they're missing out on things and they want to resubscribe. So we want to make that process as easy as possible. So as I said, I've got some tips throughout that we go through here. And as I mentioned, turning guests into members can be an automated process, which is incredibly valuable for everyone. All right, so let's move on to the next one. This is where we're going to talk about actual emails and making them better. And this is where most of my time is spent when I talk to our clients. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to start actually creating a communication in TalkBox and show you what I do as best practice if I could get that screen to move away. Okay, so the first thing we do is we go and we create a new communication. Now I'm going to do one via email and SMS just so I can show you all of the features. Now, obviously, you guys all have your own templates. If you need them updated, again, let us know. There's some other ones that are here that you might want to use as inspiration, but let's go and do an empty one just to have some fun today, and we'll just create a full blank template. Now, the first thing to think about is don't bury the lead. When a customer, I'm sorry to tell you, customers don't read emails, they skim them. And this hurts me because this is my job, but the reality is they skim them. So what you've got to do is not bury the lead. Don't take up the whole of your mobile phone with a, with an image, because people don't necessarily scroll down or across. So make sure if you've got a key image, great, but put your call to action or your headline above that. The other thing to think about is, and this is a really cool tip, I'm going to drop in an image over here. Now, Over here, almost nobody uses these features over here, which is obviously you can link. So if it's a link to a beautiful photo of your brand new steak dinner, then link to it on your menu ordering, or, you know, or if you've got it somewhere else where you've described how beautiful the Wagyu beef is or whatever it is. The best tool I can give you though, alt text. What that means is when someone is scanning their phone or the email address, and the image doesn't load, the alt text will tell them what the image is. Now, why that's important is spam creators don't do it. So this is one of those things that's best practice for you. If you do it, you've got the best chance of encouraging all of the email service providers to say, oh, these guys are legit. These guys have a relationship with that consumer, so we should pass through their email and not put it in spam. The other thing is it's best practice for people who are vision impaired because their phone will read them the words that you write in that image. So your image shouldn't be something like, you know, steak. It should be juicy steak dinner, $35 on Tuesday. Something like that. So you have about 125 characters to put over here in that alt text. And it's a really valuable tip that almost nobody does. So I encourage all of my clients to do it every single time. And I know it's got a bit of pain in the bum factor, but the value add of you doing all of these little things to make your emails better have a cumulative effect, and they improve the engagement and deliverability of your communications. So hopefully that makes sense, but again, jump in the chat if that doesn't. So alt text on your image is really important. The other thing is if I'm going to add a link, so let's just drop a button in here, and I want to, oh, sorry, that's not what I want to do. I want to add a link I want to link off to my website, for example. So I do that here. That's the wrong one, Sarah. Link here, right? So I put a link. See that insert link? Another really important tip, open that link in a new window because you don't want them bouncing off the email you've gone to all of this trouble to get them to engage with. So open it in a new window, and of course then it's easy for them to stay engaged with your communication. So hopefully that makes sense. So tip there, if you're using a link, always open in a new window and of course put your URL. So alt images we've talked about. The next one is the subject line. Subject line is the most valuable thing. Now, what all of the email service providers are looking for is, do you have a legitimate and good relationship with this reader? Does this reader really want to get your emails? Now, the way that you can help continuing to provide that value is by having an intelligent subject line that's personalized. It includes someone's first name, for example, but it's also relevant to the conversation. Don't use things like hot sale or, you know, less relevant in gaming, but you've got to be really careful about writing things that look like spam. So for example, in an email subject line, I'd be very cautious about using something like member draw $2,000 today, because that does look like spam. So what you would be better to write is something like North's member draw hits top amount or something, you know, something along that line, so that it's intriguing, so people open your email to read it, but more importantly, it doesn't look like spam. And it needs to read like a sentence. That's a really important thing. So with your subject lines, you can insert a merge field. So you could do something like first name, which is really valuable. So I'm going to insert first name and say, so presumably that says Sarah, our gaming, our venue is open late tonight, right? Something like that. Now, already it proves that you know something about this customer because you actually do know their first name. But we could do something else, and we could insert another merge field that might be more relevant. So it could be something like, I'm looking for one of the fields that you guys normally have, something like your tier. So you could insert something like platinum members, because the tier would be called platinum, members drink free tonight or something like that, if that makes sense. So subject lines, personalized, they should read like a sentence and they shouldn't read like spam. And then the next trick is a pre-header. So a pre-header basically gives you 2 cracks at getting someone's attention. And when, if you use something like Outlook, you'll see that the pre-header goes above the subject line. So you can test that yourself. Always use it, because it's another tool that shows that you're not spamming, right? So it gives you, it could be something like message from the secretary manager, or, something like that that's relevant. So basically using the pre-header gives you another tool, another grab of attention, and really importantly, it makes you look not like a spammer. So really, really valuable piece of tips there. So the next thing about deliverability or, emails is we draw our eyes downward, right? So really we tend to move into basically a funnel shape. So if you have a call to action like book now, put a big button and make it really obvious. Don't bury the lead, as I said, make it colorful. Use, something really, really visual to capture people's attention, like submit. That's a pretty boring one, but, things like that. You can also, in your email templates, use animated GIFs. And that just means that your image is moving. And there's real value in that because about 70% of all your emails will be opened on a phone. So what that enables you to do, it captures people's attention and they're like, oh, what's that? And they're much more likely to stop and spend a second and let that image sort of scroll through, like a panel. So you can incorporate things like animated GIFs, but make sure your images aren't too large, because that will slow it down. You don't want that. So make sure that they're appropriate, which is about 300 DPI for email. Okay, so let me go back and make sure I haven't missed any of the tips I wanted to tell you about naming. Oh yes, so the other tip is, this is just an internal one that will make your life easier. When you upload an image, so say, let's pick an image, let's hope there's something appropriate. Oh, this one will give you guys all a bit of a giggle. This, for those of you who have met our management team, this is what they used to look like in the early 2000s. Hopefully it will load. This was when they were featured in BRW. So for those of you that might have spoken to Lockie or Matt, you're going to get a bit of a giggle about this. Now, as you can see, this is taking a long time to load. This image is too big. So you should scale back your image, because that's not really going to open quickly. And again, you're putting another barrier between you and your recipient reading the communication. So I promise you the image is worth it. Okay, so the other thing, when you load up your images, call them something that's meaningful. So for example, call it Mother's Day Lunch 2021, because when you want to scroll back and find it and maybe use it for Mother's Day Lunch 2022, it's easy to see it instead of, 9765.jpg. So just a tip that makes your life a little bit easier, because remember, every image you load against your TalkBox communications are stored against your account, so you can reuse them. I see this is way too big an image. So here's another lesson. Don't use the big image, and I think we might not get the payoff, but it's so good. I'm going to hang on. Have we got any questions while we're waiting for that to load? Am I going too fast?
All good. No other questions so far.
Excellent. All right. Okay. And I see Mike has joined us. Hey, Mike. Mike is another one of our team. Some of you might have spoken to him at various trade shows, or he's helped do demos and stuff for you. So Mike is another one of our team members. You can catch him on LinkedIn as well. So Mike Oldroyd, feel free to drop your contact details, mate, in the chat if anyone wants to have a chat to you. Okay, here we go. We're almost there. While that is loading, the other thing I was going to tell you is about feedback. So while we're waiting for that, I'm just going to drop some feedback in. Now, for those of you that aren't using feedback, I really encourage you to use it. And the reason is user-generated reviews are the oil of SEO. So what we encourage people who have given you a good review to do is in that response email that goes over, we actually encourage them, we put the link in the email that says, hey, would you review us over here on Facebook? Now, the more good reviews you have on Facebook and Google, when people go and search for a club or a bistro or a beer or a sports bar in your area, you are more likely to be higher ranked, because Google and Facebook really value user-generated reviews. So if you're not using feedback, which is this tool here, just dropping it in, I'd encourage you to do that. And you can send a ticket to us and we can help you sort it out if you haven't. The other thing about it is, you don't just use it for new members, use it when you've made a change. So you can go and ask for feedback for anyone who's visited in the last 7 days after you've changed your menu, or you've reorganized your gaming room, or you've got a new front of house manager, something like that. That's a really good time for you to go and ask for feedback. And of course you can filter, which I'll show you shortly, on people that have just visited in a reasonable time frame. Now here we are. This payoff has been enormous on this image. I'm sorry I invested in it now, but here it comes. So feedback can be set up and the responses are automated based on what score a customer gives you. So 0 to 6 is a detractor, and obviously we're sending a conciliatory message, trying to keep them off the socials, give you the opportunity to do something about it. 9s or 10s are neutral, and we're like, hey, thanks, that's awesome. And 7s or 8s, and 9s or 10s are promoters, and that email is where we include the links to your Facebook or Google My Business page. Many of you will have met Kurt, actually, and this is this smiling little cherub here, looking quite amusing and probably quite amused with himself. So this is the boys quite a few years ago now. But it is a bit of a giggle that we've been having. We've been reviewing some of our history as our new website's coming live. So we've been building our impact data story. So hopefully you got a bit of a giggle out of that. But lesson though, don't add an enormous image into your email, because it's slowed us down enormously. And that fellow over there is Lockie, for those of you who have spoken to Locke. So any questions on how to write a good email? Feel free to ask them now, sort of before I jump off to that one. No? One thing you may not have realised is this little cutesy fella here, this is emojis. You can add emojis in your subject lines. So you can obviously add some lovely food ones. Let's have a potato, and it'll be down there at the end. And we can have a weird little face. Now, the thing about emojis, don't overuse them. Use them sparingly, because they can be a bit naff. That's just the reality for some of your younger audience. But also they can look a bit spammy. So use it sparingly, use it when it's appropriate, and use it when it's fun. But don't use it as an alternate form of communication, right? Don't send a subject line with just emojis, because people will just be confused and they'll think you're crazy. Don't make your emails too long. As I said, people don't read them. And the objective of your email is really to get someone to do something. Visit, jump on your website to have a look at your new menu, make a booking at your bistro, book a function, whatever it is. We're trying to get them to do something. So the content of your email, you always have to have that objective in mind. Now, that objective could also be something like telling a member about an AGM or things like that. Again, there might be a whole bunch of forms that you want to send them. They might have to have their proxy forms or things like that. It might be more appropriate to have those forms loaded on your website so that they click through and download them, rather than creating a really complicated email. So remember, emails are best when there's a clear call to action. Everyone knows what they're supposed to do. Newsletters are great, but again, people don't read them. So skim them, make sure your headlines are really clear, use bullet points, use imagery. Don't expect people to sit there and read it like it's a newspaper, because 70% of our customers, as I said, will read your email on their phone. So, make it appropriate in that regard. Okay, so that's probably enough about email. We've had a good giggle at our four founders, which has given us a lot of joy. Any other last chance for any questions on emails before I move on? No? All right. Okay. So design tips, as I mentioned, it's really about drawing the eye downward to your call of action. Use bullet points, use call out, use bold, use all of the features of making that text easy to read. There are some limitations though. You cannot, if you use other fonts, we can't guarantee what they're going to look like. So we only allow true fonts in TalkBox. If you need to create something with another font, you can load that up and basically make that look like an image, but that's not great. Your email should be a good balance between content and imagery. If you, and a lot of our, not so much in gaming, but in retail, for example, a lot of our clients will basically recreate their catalog as an email. This is a no-no. There must be words, because Google is looking for, remember, you're having a conversation. And I say Google because Google basically represents a significant proportion of where people read emails. So remember, we're having a conversation, so don't just blast me with images. If you've got a beautiful image gallery you want me to see, maybe, bump me off to your socials where you're hosting it or something like that. Get me excited in the email, but don't expect me to interact with everything there. The other thing is, of course, personalizing the communication is not just personalizing it to my behavior, like I've visited in the last 7 days, but personalizing it to what you know about me. Now, don't be creepy. If you go into your pause and you know that Julie came in last week and she had a steak and a glass of red wine and she bought a Keno ticket, don't reflect that back in an email to her. That's creepy. But what you could say is, hey, Julie, hope you enjoyed your visit last week. Would you like to give us a review? Or, hey, Julie, steak night's this Thursday. Because she came for steak night last Thursday. There's a good chance she might come for steak night this Thursday. But be really careful about what you reflect back. Just because you know it doesn't mean you should say it. Because customers understand you know and collect and analyze a lot of data about them. But just think how you react when Flybuys tells you, that it's got a special on Johnny Walker Red, and you're like, oh, okay, I just bought that. Do you really think I've gone through a bottle that quickly? Things like that get customers' creep factor up. So we need to be a bit cognizant of that. So use the tools that you can see about a customer, like their bonus, hey, congratulations, you got some great bonus. Here's your bonus point status, or things like that. Sub clubs, another valuable source of content. When you want to tell people about the bowls, tournament that you've got going, you might want to, acknowledge which the ladies bowls club or the juniors or the, masters or whatever it is. So you might want to include that as a merge field in the content. So that sort of stuff that is personalized to the consumer, to your member, is really, really valuable. And it also makes the consumer feel valued because you're paying attention. You know that it's me. You know a little bit about me, but not too much. Because again, remember, this channel is all about us having a relationship. So if you haven't explored some of these tools along here to make your text a little bit more interesting, you can't break it. So go and have some fun. So things like changing the font color, you can do that, or putting backgrounds in. You can make it really fancy. I'm going to make my goal in these workshops is always to make the ugliest email I can possibly do. So I'm on fire today. I'm going to increase the size of that word and make it look really weird. I can change, as I said, the text. And of course, you can use things like bold and the merge fields, and I can, add lines and move the alignment and things like that. So play around with it. You can't break it. Remember, it's cloud-based. It's always saving things, but it just gives you an opportunity to have a bit of fun with your communications, make them a little bit more interesting, and you can put some padding around that, so it looks, a little bit more compelling when you're opening it up. So we're on fire here to make a really ugly email. Use the tools that are up here as well to make things a little bit easier. Things like image grid, if you do want to have a lot of images, can be really good. And remember, don't make them huge because they take a long time to load up. Okay, so that is how to write a beautiful email. Now, another tip I'm sure you know is that you can save that as a template. So you can use that template again, particularly if you're sending a newsletter or you're sending a member notification about subs coming up or things like that. Save that as a template, use it as a meaningful name so that you can remember what it's called, and do something like the year, because then that's useful that, oh, that was the 2021 version, because, that was slightly different. So you can do that. Okay, so I'm going to pretend that we are rocking and this is our beautiful email. Now, probably one of the things that you don't do is have a look at what it's going to look like. If I've added some merge fields, I can preview what it will look like for someone who's in the database. And then I can just see how it all lands and make sure that I'm comfortable. So that little preview content is a really good tool. The other one up here is what we call sort of a mini litmus. This is what it looks like on a computer. So this is the first view. Very small percentage of your customers will view their email on their computer. iPad, the older audience might certainly look at an email on an iPad, so that's all pretty good. But this one up here is the only one that matters. So make sure it's stacked, make sure you've got the right real estate, the right message in that top screen, because that's as much. See, for example, we've got a submit button, which is probably the most important thing in this email, and you don't see it on the top screen. So I would go and redesign that email, because that's really not going to land where I want it to, because most people won't see my button. So hopefully that all makes sense, and that's the most important thing that we're focused on communications. All right, so let's continue. And we've come to our SMS now. Now, for those of you who haven't explored SMS much, it is how you get attention. Don't tell me about something in 3 weeks via SMS. Tell me about something that's happening now. Tell me about the virtual draws tonight. Tell me that you've got a couple of late bookings available for dinner tomorrow. Tell me about the promotion that starts, on Friday. So think about it as a timely thing. And capturing my attention. The reality is, and we hear this a lot from clients, older people don't have a mobile. It's not true. And they're more likely to engage in an SMS than they are an email. They tend to have their email. They might not have a smartphone, but they're much more likely to read an SMS. So you can send an email via SMS, which is what I've just done here. So that link that I'm pointing to here, that's actually that beautiful email that we've just created, and that's how I send an email via SMS. Now, we have a new feature, which you may not be aware of, which you can now send emojis in SMS as well. Now, just a note of caution, not all emojis are created equal, in that some of them take up quite a lot of characters and some of them take up very few characters. So if I took the link to that email, actually, if I took the first name out, I will get to see how many characters I've got left, or I can wait till I get to the end. So just as I said, a little word of caution, emojis are awesome, really fun in email, in SMS, and they definitely get attention, but they do take up more characters than just a single letter. And weirdly, some of the most generic ones take up the most characters, like squirrely brackets, for example, are amazingly high character count. If you really want to get attention and you just need to fill some bums on seats, you can send an SMS, for something that's happening in the next couple of hours, and drop a voucher straight into the SMS. Now, obviously, because you guys are Odessey, if you've got an Odessey kiosk, that can be made available on the kiosk as well. So, which is a great feature. So you can just say, hey, Mrs. Smith, virtual member draw tonight. Sorry, I've just told someone I'm on my way instead of I can't answer my phone. Virtual member draw tonight. Here's a $10 voucher for you to get you started, or something like that. Send that via SMS because it's timely and it's relevant, and it's within a couple of hours. So SMS, that's the best time to use it. It definitely gets attention. The other time, and Mike is sort of our expert in this, he's done this quite a lot, is sending SMS reminders for people who haven't redeemed messages. So in our automated campaigns, we will often add an SMS reminder, and that will really seize a boost. 3 days left before your voucher runs out tends to get a really good lift in participation rates, which is obviously what we're trying to do, because we're all about more visits more often. So have fun with emojis. They can be quite fun in SMS, but yeah, just remember that they're not all created equal. So that's how we send emoji. So the good thing is, it has warned me that this is actually, because of the use of my funky emojis, this is a little longer, so I'm going to be charged 2 credits. So I can make the decision that I continue and like, yeah, okay, it's only going to a small audience, that's okay, or I can reduce it. Or I'm gonna persist because it's a really cool emoji. So I'm moving forward. Now, when we get to this screen, most customers, unless they've done their filtering through Metropolis, they're not really thinking about filters and tags. So they will just usually send it to everyone. But what you can do, there's lots of functions, there's lots of ways that you can cut the database up here. So if I want to send an email and SMS, that's going to go to everyone, and they might get it twice if they've got both channels. But if I just want to send an email, what that means is there's 2 people in my database that only have a mobile number. So the only way I can talk to them is if I send them an SMS, right? Because I really want to talk to everyone. Or if I send an SMS only, there are 7 people that don't have a mobile number and only have an email address. So I have to send them that email. So hopefully that makes sense, and that helps you understand how you maximize your audience when you're trying to capture everybody. And one of the things I will show you is how to figure out the database if there's people who are SMS mobile only. The next way I could cut the database up is just go and pick a few people. So I might have my staff in here as a category, but I just want to send it to the 4 managers, right? So I could just go and search for them and find them and add them in, send it to them first, because I need to tell them about it before I tell my customers tomorrow. Or I could go in and start filtering customers. Now, this is really, really powerful. And in the presentation, I've got a link to the top 10 filters that we encourage customers to use. So, for example, I might be looking for my best customers who have been here in the last 30 days. So what that means is gaming turnover last 30 days is not blank. So they've been here in the last 30 days, right? I could use another field, but I'm going to use that one. Plus, their average gaming visit turnover is more than $30. And I have no idea whether that's good or bad, guys. So I'm just making up numbers, okay? So feel free to educate me. Now, if I apply that filter, because this is a test database, it's not going to have anyone in it. But I'd be able to see how many people that was, and I'd be going, oh, okay, that's probably not enough, or it's too many. I might keep filtering, and I can use that filter to, segment my audience. Now, if you want to send a communication to your whole audience, you need to send your monthly newsletter. I still really, really encourage you to break your audience up between your best customers and everybody else. And one of the ways you can see that is visit frequency is high and spend range. Now, remembering spend range is across gaming and point of sale in your venue is high. This is the top 25% of your customers. And I encourage you, and I'll show you how to do this in a second, to create that as a filter that you use ongoing. And the reason that you should do this is, even if you're sending the monthly newsletter, those people, their opinion matters more than everybody else's, because they're your best customers. So if they're not engaging with your content, you need to rethink your content strategy, right? So you also want to keep an eye on their behavior, because, as I said, they're the most engaged. You also want to tell them first about booking in your bistro or your promotions or things like that, because, again, they're your best customers. So as a habit, I really, really encourage you to get into the idea of having that filter of best customers and then everybody else. and using that. And I'll show you how to do that right now. So actually, what I'll finish on quickly is tags. I'm sure many of you would use tags when you go into Metropolis or H&L or something like that, and you want to find all those people who came in on your trivia night, because you want to, so you know that that was last Thursday, and you know that they dined in the bistro, and they all, you know, had a, because you they paid, you know, $10 entry or something like that, and that's a pause button. You can go and grab that data out. We need the member ID, and there's some instructions on how to upload in a mirror mode account. Then you can tag those customers as trivia Thursday night, September 2021. And you can talk to them next week and remind them that you're going to book ahead for trivia because it's filling up soon. And a tag is something, once you attach it to a contact, it stays there until you take it off. A filter is something that is calculated constantly based on my behavior. So I can come in and out of a filter. I might not be the best customer during your peak season because I go away and, you know, and go to Europe, if only. But if I have that tag on me as trivia customer, that stays on me until you take it off. So hopefully you can understand that those two different tools are how you can segment your audience. So I'm going to go over and show you how to create those filters that I think are really, really useful. So I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to say best customers. And I can add a different, an additional time factor like last 7 days, but I'm just going to go my best customers because it is recalculated every day. Visit frequency is high, plus spend range is high. Create. Now, when I go back to my communication, which is still sitting here in drafts, I'm going to go and select that beautiful communication, and I'm going to say contacts using a saved filter, and I'm going to use that one. Now, remembering that's only going to the best customers. So how do I send the communication to everybody else? So I'm just going to actually not continue because I don't know who's in this database and who might suddenly get that communication, but obviously you know the last steps of sending that communication. So the next thing is I want to go and reuse that communication to send it to somebody else. Yeah, that's okay. So there's two little tricks I'm going to teach you here. Come on, little computer. Here we go. That reuse button, really, really, really useful, right? So I can reuse that communication, and that in this case it's an SMS, so I can send that again. So I can keep going, and that filter is, I need to create a filter that is the opposite of that, right? So we might call it something like all other customers, and that will be all other customers, and that will be spend range is not high, plus visit frequency is not high. And that's everyone else. So that's the other 75% of your database. And so I've got that communication. I can resend it. I can reuse it to send it to those people. Hopefully everyone's is with me here. So I've got two filters. So I can do, now I can do it to all other customers. Does that make sense? Hopefully, jump in again with any questions you've got here. The other really cool trick, which a lot of customers, so sometimes you've got a really important thing, you know, like a really important event that you want everyone to know about, but you didn't get a really good response on your communication. Now, the problem I've got here is that everyone has opened these communications because they're all, no, okay. They're all gone one-to-one. So I'm just going to jump into another account for a second and show you how to do it. So if I go to look at these communications and I want to reuse that communication, I can do that. But the most important thing I want to understand first is who didn't open it. That was really good. Maybe I sent it at the wrong time. You know, maybe it wasn't the best subject line. So I really want to send it to everyone who didn't see it. So I'm going to have another crack. So I'm going to go to see full report, recipients, right? And I want to know anyone who didn't open that communication, right? Tia didn't, probably because isn't she on maternity leave? So I can select that, and potentially that was everybody. And I can tag those people as didn't open communication September, 28. And I can use that tag when I send the communication again. Now, that's a little bit sort of tricky. Is there any questions about that one? That's a bit new. There is a link to retargeting in the presentation, so you can sort of step your way through it, and obviously you can always reach out to our support team. But the great news is you can send that email a second time really, really easily by just tagging the customers that didn't open it and using that as the audience that you select when you send the communication again. So hopefully that made sense, and you can have a crack at that for those really important communications that you want to send. So let's jump back and make sure that I've got everything. Now, one of the other tips is SPF records and custom domains. So when a communication comes from TalkBox, it will come from southmackay@talkboxapp.com. If you want it to come from South Mackay and not talk about TalkBox, let us know and we can set up a custom domain for you. There's a small charge in that, but it's better from your customer's perspective and also, you owning the relationship. So reach out and let us know if you'd like to do that. And SPF records, that's about making sure that on your side, we're set up correctly so that you'll see test emails and emails going in. Because if an email like South Mackay @talkbox comes into your South Mackay environment, it looks weird to your spam filters. So it's always good to set up those SPF records. So if you haven't done that, reach out and let us know and we can help you with that one. My other tip is identifying SMS customers, which I said I would show you how to do. So this is our support center. If you haven't encountered it, then you should do that because there's a heap of really good information in here. So one of the things that we've really understood, particularly, who was it, Louise, you mentioned you've got ticketing. When we see things like reservation data and order at table, often we only get mobile number. We don't get an email from those customers. They're much less likely to give it. So what we need to understand is, are we talking to our whole audience if we're only sending it via email? So there's a really clear instruction guide here, but I'm going to go and do it in TalkBox. So I'm going back to filters. And I am going to create a new filter, and we're still in my account here. So email address is blank, is the first field, and mobile number is not blank. Not blank, right? See how we got here? And they are subscribed for SMS marketing, which is obviously important because is subscribed. Now, hopefully that made sense, and obviously we'd need to name that. But basically in this audience, there's one person who I can't reach if I try and talk, if I only send email. I'm going to completely miss them. So it's a really good thing for you to do, to just go and make sure that you've got everyone if you're sending a communication. So best practice usually is to send via email and SMS, as we did earlier. But if you do need to make sure that you're capturing everyone in your database. So, all right. Still, all right, nothing, no one wants to ask me anything. Okay, so we've talked about that. We've talked about the purpose and timing. We've sent an email via SMS, and we've talked about emojis. So we're cracking on here. And as I said, not sending an SMS might mean you're missing out on some of your audience. Some of the tools we've talked about, filters and tags, the top 10 filters, I'd encourage you to go and have a look at that. It's really useful. It gives you an idea of what you could be doing in audience segmentation. But, you know, not all people care about all things in your venue. So think about audience segmentation. I've showed you how to retarget your customers. And this is a link to an article that actually explains exactly what the Odessey fields mean. So you've got a bunch of custom fields in your database. This is what they actually mean. So you can go back and double check and make sure that you're clear what you're actually trying to achieve here. So, all right, I'm just keeping an eye on the time, how we're going. We're nearly out of time. So if you have automated campaigns in your database, and I'm going to keep going back there, you will be able to see them in the date triggered and birthday. If you don't have them, I really, really encourage you. Everyone needs a welcome message. A revisit message is really about getting them back in the first 30 days. If they haven't visited a second time and they fall out of that period, there's a good chance that they've forgotten about you and they've moved on. And we don't want that. We want them to become a regular visitor to your venue. So sending those revisit communications are really valuable. Milestone visits, we're working on a customer journey, which I'll talk about in a sec, called the Hall of Fame. But milestone visits is a really lovely way to do surprise and delight. So, you know, every 20th visit, just say, hey, Mary, thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. Here's a free coffee next time you visit. You don't even have to send her a message, you know, send her an offer. You just have to acknowledge that she's a great customer. The other one that you can think about in terms of milestones is years of membership. You know, sports clubs do this really, really well. I'm a 20-year member at Collingwood, so I've got a badge that, you know, I can wear on my scarf that says I've been a member for 20 years. So acknowledging tenure is a really valuable way to build customer engagement. Early, late and lost, I'm sure most of you would know about our expected next visit calculations, which are custom to every individual. They're a really good way to just keep the database ticking over, making sure that we're retaining your customers. Birthday is really important. Don't forget my birthday. Have an offer. You know, be generous. The most generous offers should be on the birthday. Don't put too much encumbrance on it. And also, you know, think about communicating in advance to someone's milestone birthday. Or even if you have a really good catering, you know, function room or things like that, you know, reminding them in advance of their birthday. Recurring communications are things that we often do. Like member subs are due. You know, if you have a fixed period, you can do that, or catering or functions or book a round of golf or whatever it is that you never know when someone might be thinking about that. So you just set that up as a recurring communication that gets scheduled, you know, once every 2 months or 3 months or things like that. Some of the other communications that we see, you can, if you haven't explored this already, turn on non-marketing communications for member notices. So what that means is it will ignore status, subscription status. And that's really important because you actually have to tell your members stuff sometimes. You know, subs are going up, subs are due, there's an AGM, things like that. So you can contact us and we can turn that on for you for a communication that allows you to send out that communication and then turn it back off so you don't, you know, mess it up. You can also automate your renewals, and we've got a new feature which I'll talk about in one sec called Journeys, which will make that even cooler. And virtual draws, at the moment we update that data once a day with Odessey, but that's going to get updated more regularly. So that might enable you to send a few messages across the course of the day if you need to. So, and I did talk about using feedback as getting an insight, you know, after you've changed, you've got a reno, you've done something new to the venue. That's a really good time. Go and find people who visited in the last, you know, 7 or 14 days and ask them for feedback, because that's going to give you insight into the operations. A couple of things that are coming soon that are super exciting, probably the 2 biggest things that we've done in TalkBox in a long time. The first one is sections. What a section is basically creating a block of text and images, and you can just save it just like you save an image, and you can just reuse it. So for example, if you've got sub clubs, what a great way to drop in info about the bowls tournaments, or you can use it for terms and conditions in promotions, or anything that we can't even envisage how you're going to use it, but that should be released in the next couple of days, I think, or the next week, and you'll get to see quite a bit about that, and it is going to be super useful. And you'll find, you know, creating communications, and it'll also encourage you to segment your communications because it's going to be easier. The single biggest thing we've released in TalkBox, you know, certainly in my time here, is customer journeys. And this is a visual journey. So it can be things that we're calling it the Hall of Fame journey, which is, you know, years of membership and renewals and all of that wrapped up. You can have a sub-club journey. So if you've signed someone up and they're part of the RSL network in your club, you need to tell them about all of the membership benefits that they get as, you know, an RSL member. They can go on a welcome journey that's specific to them. How it will work is that we will be drafting a bunch of journeys for you, and you'll be able to pick a couple of them, modify them, tweak them as you need, and then you can obviously go and create your own. But we figure getting you started might be a good thing. So we'll be in touch with you over the coming weeks to showcase how Journeys is going to work, and encourage you to have a try and see if that will, you know, enhance your customer engagement. And it does things like, if they didn't open an email, send them an SMS in 7 days, or if they clicked this link, send them this SMS. If they didn't click that link, you know, things like that. So it's a much more granular activity based on the customer's behavior with your communications, or if they visited or didn't visit, things like that. So my last couple of tips, I've mentioned our support centre. It's really valuable. It's support.impactdata.com.au. There it is there. I've got a link here. We've got some great videos on the YouTube channel, including a video on how to use those gaming aggregate fields. And of course, you can reach out to Sadie and her team if you've got any other questions. So that's Julie and I. I've got 2 or 3 minutes left. I've talked a lot. Hopefully you've got lots of value out of this, but I would love any last questions or things that you thought you needed covered. No? All right, well, hopefully you've all got something out of this, and I'm going to send you a feedback question. So hopefully you'll let us know what you thought of it, and you got some value out of today. You know, if you get nothing else from today's session, think about filtering and segmenting your audience and not sending sort of batch and blast communications to everyone. And so really explore filters and tags. Think about using emojis and use them well, and make sure you've got, you know, your automated messages that are just trickling your customers coming through the door. And keep an eye out on, if you are a user in your user account, you will get the TalkBox newsletters. So if you're not getting them and you're not finding out about our new connections and our new features, that's why. So you need to create yourself as a user, and then you will get those communications. And that's how you'll know we've got new connections coming up, like try booking and 7 rooms. So that's where we let you know about that sort of stuff. And of course, that's how we'll be telling you about Journeys. So thank you everyone who attended. Hopefully you got something out of today and you've learned a little bit, and you're a little bit more confident about tackling your emailing, you know, your digital member engagement, and, you know, being a little bit more strategic with that. So thanks everyone, and have a great rest of the week.